Okay, amazing. Well, excited today to be here on the InsurTech Leadership Podcast with Jonathan Shapiro. He is co-founder and director of Optalitix, a company transforming how insurers and financial services organizations make data-driven decisions. John's background uniquely bridges software engineering, AI innovation, and entrepreneurial leadership. At Optalitix, he's helped build a platform that turns data models into live, scalable applications, empowering actuaries, underwriters, and analysts to deploy AI at the heart of business workflows. Welcome, John.
Thanks, Josh. Great to be here. Nice to meet
Yeah,
you.
yeah, absolutely. Excited to have you. So where are you coming to us from today?
So I'm based in London. So despite the South African accent, I've lived in London for the last 30 years.
Great.
So
Well, London is certainly a insurance and insurtech hub, as well as a financial services and fintech hub too. So it's certainly
absolutely.
one of the spots where you're in the heart of it.
Absolutely. It's the London market, which is actually a worldwide market. Referred to the London market is quite the heart of insurance. So yeah, we're definitely at the center of it.
Great. Maybe just as a starting point, you could maybe fill in some of the gaps in my introduction and just share a little bit more about Optalitix and your core offerings at this point.
Sure, absolutely. So Optalitix, and we'll, I suppose at some point go into how we got here, but where we are today, we provide a no-code pricing and underwriting platform for global insurers, reinsurers, MGAs, and actually lenders. We'll focus on the insurance side today, but there are some lenders that use our underwriting product as well. And really, we take insurers have a multitude of models, surprisingly, many of them in Excel. And we take those models, whether they are in Excel or Python or R, we transform them into cloud-hosted APIs, literally within minutes, and then we allow them to connect into our pricing or underwriting platform to really allow more efficiency and innovation in the pricing and underwriting space.
Got it. And so is part of what makes the offering unique that ability to kind of take their bespoke models and allow them to implement them in a more efficient way versus sort of having a stock set of models and then they have to figure out how to customize on top of that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's so much inefficiency in the insurance space, and particularly in the pricing and underwriting space, and really in the commercial insurance and reinsurance, particularly where it's very complex. And it's not a criticism of the industry because it's actually quite a hard problem to solve, which we like because we're moving the industry along with being able to solve that problem. So what you found is that traditionally, because this is hard and because the models are complex, it's quite hard to operationalize and to write in code. So if you look on the retail insurance side, there is quite a lot of efficiency. There are models that can do really cool stuff on car insurance and home insurance. And these are, they're doing millions of quotes a day. But when you're trying to price up something like marine insurance or a property portfolio, that's a lot more complex. And underwriters have built these complex models over many, many years, and they have IP locked into these spreadsheets. And but they need a way to operationalize it because we're in the modern world now. You need to be able to connect it to AI systems. You need to be able to analyze the data. You need to bring in other data that exists in APIs or risk systems or reference data. Now, all of that is quite difficult when you've got a static model sitting on some underwriter's desktop in Excel. And at the same time, so there's kind of two philosophical approaches to this. On the one hand, you can say, well, let them use what they've got, but enhance it and make it easier for them. The other side, and there are solutions that do this, say, throw it away and rewrite it. We've got a much better, more efficient model for you to use. Use our models or use our model elements and rebuild everything. But that's quite a hard sell sometimes to underwriters and pricing actuaries who've built their knowledge in over many years.
And so was this the exact problem you set out to solve when the business was founded, and to take this approach in doing it, or has it evolved over time?
So it's definitely definitely evolved. And I've got a tech background. So I did engineering in South Africa, and actually did one of the first AI masters at my university
Ah,
more than 3 years ago in neural networks and pattern recognition. Um, and then didn't really work in that for many years, but ran other tech companies, or found and I sold my previous company in 2012, which was a
okay.
tech company, and we built a fuzzy search engine that made financial sanctions checking a lot easier, and sold it to another bigger company. So I'd left that, and I was looking for what the next thing to do is. And my co-founder Danny is an actuary, and he was a corporate actuary in Vitality. Vitality is one of the kind of InsurTech success stories in
Yeah.
the UK, and he was one of the very first employees there and helped them set it up. And he had just left there after over 10 years of being in the company, and they'd grown very big, and he wanted to do something entrepreneurial. And he'd experienced kind of all types of frustration as an actuary working in a corporate. And we kind of said together, there's something here. There's lots of problems we can solve. Let's look at them. Let's take our time. So it was a bit of an unusual start, to be honest. We decided to work through those problems, and we had multiple ideas, some more radical. So we started trying to kind of see if we could get companies to engage with looking at AI. Then we realized we had to call it data analytics because AI was a little bit scary. And then even data analytics turned out to be scary, and the cloud. And this was 2013, 2014.
Right.
So we ended up coming up with a number of solutions, but really kind of starting from a more consulting basis. So we didn't raise money, but we always wanted to build a product, and we were trying to work out what product to build. So if you fast forward to kind of around 2019, 2020, what we kept coming up against was this problem of spreadsheets and models, and where the actuary had an amazing model, and Danny had experienced this himself, where he had kind of predictive models that could work out lapses when customers would lapse, but they could never operationalize it. You couldn't connect it to any system. You couldn't give it to the call center or give it to an underwriter. So we said before we were going to do the cool stuff, we actually had to kind of solve this core problem. And we did that. And then in 2020, we got selected into Lloyd's Lab. So Lloyd's of London have an innovation lab, and they have something like, at the time, they had something like 200 companies a year that would apply for this, and they'd select about 10 into a cohort to work with them, and to work with the insurers and syndicates and MGAs in the Lloyd's market to kind of test out their ideas and to learn from them and to be able to develop their products. And we were very fortunate to be selected into that. The kind of germ of our idea, or it was actually a working product at the time, got a lot of interest from the clients and companies we worked with. And so that really allowed us to productize and to hone our product and to understand what was missing. Like we said, an astounding fact is we found, I think, something like over 80% of pricing in the Lloyd's market was done on spreadsheet. That's quite quite amazing. Billions and billions of pounds of premium being written on spreadsheets and models on desktops. But when we said to them, great, we've got this tool that can automatically convert your spreadsheet into an API, they were like, well, what do we connect it to? And we said, your front end. And they were like, what front end? And so that kind of helped us to develop the solution and Optalitix quotes. We had models, which was the back end, the kind of Excel and Python and R converter, and then Quote, which is the front end pricing and underwriting platform that sits in front of it.
So when you were talking to these clients and the folks who actually are building and using the spreadsheets day to day, did their organizations have systems that ostensibly they should have been using but just couldn't accommodate them, or had they always just been working off spreadsheets?
I mean, in a lot of cases, the spreadsheet was and is the system.
Yeah,
And some of the controls that around is it had to be stored on a common drive, or you had to version it, or you had to lock it down with a password. I mean, really, really basic stuff. And we still see this today in companies. But I guess what we realized is that you could either try and fight it and you could say spreadsheets are bad. And we're not only about spreadsheets. We've got,
yeah,
lots of other offerings, and you can write it in Python and R now and other models. But there's still spreadsheets are an incredibly powerful programming language if you take away all the bad stuff. If you take away the problem of not being able to share it securely or or with governance, or being able to audit what's been happening, or to be able to get data at scale in and out of that model. So we worked on and we solved all these problems. We have solved them plus more. And when you add those two elements together, you get a very, very powerful solution where you got actuaries that are empowered to develop their own models and to understand them and to test them. And then you've got underwriters that they can give these models to, that can work on it in a structured, cloud-based, web-hosted way with either very nice front ends or spreadsheet-based front ends, whatever they want. So one of the key things is it's about flexibility and about empowering our clients to work on our product themselves without coming to us and requiring us to do tons and tons of consultancy for them.
yeah. Actually, that was going to be my question: is how do you scale something like this and not end up doing custom work for every client?
Yeah, and actually, it's the opposite. I'm allergic to custom work, and it's kind of from our origins. You would have thought that's where we would have got to, but we were very passionate about developing a SaaS product, developing something that would be a standard platform for clients to use, but allowing the clients and all partners, because we now work with partners who might configure the system on behalf of customers. But allowing them to bring their individual personalization, customization, make the screens look as they want, use their own models. And so, kind of, if you look at the IP, our IP really is about the platform and the enablement, whereas the customer can still retain their IP within their model and their own particular flavor of how their pricing works, how they assess risk. So we give them all the tools to supercharge that and put it on steroids, but they still kind of have their core models that they can work on, and workflow as well. They can configure workflow on the system. How do you go from the approval stages? How do you automate it? We'll talk about AI and how that's coming into it as well. But just even at the most basic level, you've got data coming in. An underwriter needs to look at it. They need to ingest it into the model. The model needs to process it. They need to do something with it. They need to make a decision. They need to pass that decision on to someone else. They need to generate documents. They need to take that data and pass it into their back-end policy administration system. So all of that stuff we make super easy for them to do, but still allowing them to do the hard stuff that is hard in insurance. Insurance is still hard.
Yeah,
Setting
sure.
risk is not easy.
So, low code and no code were definitely buzzwords that were extremely prominent. I don't know exactly how many years back, but a few years back. And obviously AI is the term on everyone's lips these days, and whether it's generative AI,
Yeah.
agentic AI, good old fashioned machine learning, et cetera,
Yeah.
et cetera. So yeah, maybe it's a good time just to segue into that. How do these sort of do these pieces fit together naturally, or how do the different concepts kind of work together?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's AI throughout the ecosystem. And particularly for me, it's fantastic now to see how AI is actually coming to fruition and becoming, mainstream. I mean, it's funny. I tell, both my kids are at university now, but and my son's been studying AI in his computing degree. But I say to them, like, when I was doing it, we'd run a model overnight on a computer, and now you can run that same thing in 30 seconds on an
Right.
iPhone. So the advances in cloud computing and computing power, in the understanding of development of LLMs, has really brought a practical application of AI. But then you stand back and you say, well, we need to actually be pragmatic and realistic about what we can do with it. And bear in mind also that you're dealing with a very conservative industry. There's lots of governance, there's lots of skepticism in the insurance industry. So you go to the conferences and you'll hear everybody saying we're embracing AI and agentic AI, and then you go, well, what are you actually doing? And they're going, we're thinking and we're trying to understand. So to come back to how that applies to our product, if you think about the life cycle of data in the underwriting process, you may start with unstructured data. So there's a lot of work being done at the ingestion phase. So whereas before, so in the old days, as you should say, an underwriter would be emailed information, well, they still are, from a broker, and it might be a list of properties, it might be a form, it might be all other types of data. And they would take this data, they'd use their brain, and they'd transcribe it into their model in the right format, and then they'd process that data. So, of course, that can be automated by AI now, and AI is super efficient at understanding unstructured data and putting it into a structure. And there are probably 4 or 5 companies out there that are their whole business is just doing that. And we've integrated with companies like that, where they are doing the data ingestion and then spitting it out into an API into us. Then there's kind of the analysis or assistance. So you're saying, well, can you assist the underwriter in crunching all that data once it comes in? And that's an area that we're working with. We've done some work with Google. We're a Google partner. We're looking at other AI where you can take that data and do kind of a first pass and give the underwriter an opinion or surface the data in a way. So kind of almost like a virtual analyst. So that's something that we're looking at in terms of, so kind of looking to augment rather than replace. And then I think it's also about helping with data quality, with interpretation of the data, visualization. So there's quite a lot of areas that AI, I think agentic AI is just, perhaps an overall, a kind of umbrella term that can fit on top of that, where you're just saying, instead of the human initiating it, let the AI go out and do it itself. Can apply across all of that. You can go and get data, you can go and pull data in. But does that give kind of a bit of a sense of where we see the AI landscape?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just curious, is there maybe a recent, more specific use case that, illustrates kind of AI's value in underwriting or pricing that you could maybe share?
I think the data ingestion is definitely one where we've got a client that's being sent paper forms or scanned forms, and literally they were getting transformed, and that data, 400 data points are getting taken automatically by the AI. And in fact, while they have their own form, what they're also able to do now is take competitor forms, and so you can now say to a broker, send us any form, whether you filled it out on our paper or you filled it out on another competitor paper, send it in and we'll underwrite it. And literally they're hitting an email inbox, it's getting transformed into an API, pushed into our system, initially priced. So you've got an underwriter who's suddenly just starting with, oh, another form's arrived. It's all been transcribed. It's all been assessed. It's been triaged. and the most important ones, or most likely, are put at the top, and there's been an initial pricing done.
And having kind of been working with AI and in the data space long before it became mainstream, I'm just curious, how do you feel like the conversation around AI in insurance has changed, maybe particularly recently, and then also looking forward, how do you see that balance between, human expertise and AI decision support continuing to evolve?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, we genuinely have seen the evolution from walking to a client, naively mentioning AI in insurance quite early on, and kind of getting almost booted out the room as, bringing this, black magic that that
Yeah.
nobody wants to know about, and it's scary, and black box, and we have to be able to explain things, and we know, we can't even get our data out of system, never mind run AI algorithms on it. Yeah, I mean, we had this with where we used to build some models for a client and roll on a few years later, and they had a data science team of 20 people where they never had one data scientist in the organization before. So data analytics and AI, are definitely now mainstream. Certainly data analytics, AI getting there, mainstream in the conversation and in implementation in starting to within insurers. In terms of the application, I think there's a wariness in terms of understanding. You're talking big numbers, risk analysis, and it's unlikely that in the near future that's going to be left purely to AI. So I see AI is going to be more of an enhancement, making your underwriters bionic,
Yeah.
in a way where you can give them added brains and do the work that takes them a lot of time but doesn't add a lot of value. It comes back to kind of what I was saying. If you can do the data wrangling, you can put the data in the right format for them and assist them in crunching it and putting it into a form, and providing some sort of high-level analysis. You still, I think, need that expertise in the underwriting space and the risk assessment space and the model development area. That doesn't mean AI may not take over in certain areas,
Yeah.
in terms of being able to automate the analysis or the assessment, but I think it's still a little way off in terms of total automation. But assisted automation, we're in that now.
And to your point earlier, it probably is going to move a lot faster in certain lines of business than others, right?
Yeah, and I think retail will move faster than commercial.
So,
And then you go, sorry, just to add to that, if you
yeah.
then you've got reinsurance, and reinsurance is another level back because that's even more complex and
Right.
it's bigger numbers again. And so, we deal with that whole value chain from, MGAs that are then backed by insurers, and we deal with the insurers, and then insurers are backed by reinsurers, and we sell within that whole chain. And there definitely are different levels of appetite within that chain.
Yeah. So just shifting away from AI a moment and a little bit to how you and Danny built the business. So did you have a particular leadership philosophy or particular kind of strategic principles that you built the business on? And then as it evolved from kind of more of the consulting into more building, software products, did that change at all?
Yeah, so I think we both, fortunately, I think went into this with the same end goal, which was not to build a consultancy, but to build a product company. But we built it through initially doing consulting. And actually, if you look at kind of our funding journey, we started in 2013. We only raised our first funds in 22. We were unfashionably profitable in the early in the early days,
Right.
and actually bootstrapped it and built real revenue, real clients. Until we got to a point really where we had the core of the product and we had to push hard and build a sales team and
Yep.
do some marketing. So I mean, I guess in terms of leadership philosophy, again, Optalitix is my third company. I've had two other companies, and in all of them, um, I think for me the most important thing is team. You've got to build a great team. You've got to have the right people around you, the right expertise, people who are enthusiastic about the company, who buy into the philosophy, who are empowered. And I know these are buzzwords, but it actually does matter. And I mean, I
Yep.
work now with people that I worked with in my startup 20 years ago who came back, and one of them joined a year ago, and I worked with them, and that leads me on to, I guess, my next theme, which is really about relationships. Relationships are so important in business, whether they're certainly with your staff and team and partners and colleagues, but also with your customers and your partners and your suppliers, because good times are fine, but when you have difficulty, relationships count so much, and there is not a business out there that doesn't have hard times,
Right.
challenges, and so and insurance is a industry built on relationships. I mean, started in and continues in lunches and beers in Leadenhall Market, and
Yeah.
Lloyd's, I think, started as a coffee shop.
Right.
So, relationships are really important, and I think Danny and I both believe, in that a lot in terms of building that.
If there sort of was some lesson learned that you could give yourself starting your first business versus today,
Yeah.
what might that be?
Um, so I think it's so important to enjoy the journey. It's a long journey, and every company, we always used to joke how long it takes to achieve overnight success.
Right.
Um, it takes years, and I think it's also work with people who, not worrying so much about who gets the credit. Um, it's choosing the right people is something I learned along the way a lot. But I think it's important to enjoy the journey. It's important to have fun in work. Work is hard as well, but um, you know, it's while you've got to have an eye on the end goal, and where you're going to. I think it's very important to enjoy what you're doing day to day and to enjoy the people around you. And that's why, again, it's about team. It's work with people you enjoy working with, and that you can work with.
Yeah. So, John, I appreciate your time and the conversation today. Is there anything we haven't covered that you would like to touch on before we wrap up?
No, I mean, I think in terms of perhaps just from an Optalitix point of view, where we want to go is really, scaling out. We very keen. The most important thing for us is adoption, as getting our platform adopted by more and more insurers. I think we've got over the initial hurdles, the challenge of being trusted. Who's the startup that's coming to deal with our data, or it's massive companies that you're dealing with, and dealing with enterprise is difficult. Now I think it's getting that AI integration out there, getting adoption across leading insurers. We deal with some really big names at the moment, and we want more and more people to be using Optalitix. And the other area which I haven't mentioned, we focused on AI, but just the one part I'd like to mention is data, because
Yeah.
there is massive amounts of data, and we are building, like, expanding, like, our data lake capabilities. That's another big initiative for us. Allowing our insurers to crunch their data and deal with this big data. Big data, I know, was an old term, but it hasn't
Yeah.
gone away. And
Yeah.
um, and that will also be another big journey for us, and big development.
And are you primarily focused on customers connected with the Lloyd's market, or are you beyond that at this point?
yeah, we've got international clients. We're dealing in the US, so Lloyd's market's a big one, but all over, schemes in the US, all types of schemes there. We deal in Europe, any MGA, anybody who does pricing and underwriting, which is pretty much any insurer, not really retail, again, although we do have retail insurers and we have life insurers using it. Really, the core market is the commercial insurance, reinsurance. Reinsurance is a massive growing area for us. We kind of stumbled into it, but reinsurers are just finding our system is such a good fit. We have tons of inbound interest now. So yeah, in any market.
Yeah. All right, great. Well, John Shapiro, co-founder and director of Optalitix, really appreciate you sharing your perspectives on the industry and what Optalitix is up to. And I think people can find you at optalitix.com, correct?
That's right. And thanks a lot, Josh. Great talking with you, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Enjoy your evening. Thanks so much.
Great. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye.